Welcome to another episode of Horror House, where I share with you the most terrifying stories of haunted places. Today, I have a chilling tale of a family that moved into a farmhouse that was cursed by evil. This is their story in their own words. My name is Anna, and I am a single mother of 2 kids, Jake and Lily. We inherited this old farmhouse from my great-uncle, who passed away last year. He left us a letter saying that he wanted us to have the house and that he hoped we would be happy there. He also warned us not to go into the basement or to disturb anything in the house. He said it was for our own safety. We thought he was just being superstitious or maybe senile. We didn't know anything about him or the house. We were just grateful to have a place to live after my husband died in a car accident. We packed our bags and drove to the farmhouse, hoping for a fresh start. The house was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by cornfields and woods. It looked old and rundown, but it had a certain charm to it. We decided to make the best of it and try to fix it up. We spent the first day cleaning and unpacking, and then we went to bed, exhausted. That's when the nightmare began. The first night, I heard a loud thud from the basement. It sounded like someone had dropped something heavy. I got up and went to check it out. I opened the basement door and saw a dark staircase leading down. I grabbed a flashlight and started to descend. As soon as I stepped on the first step, I felt a cold breeze on my face. I shivered and continued down. The basement was damp and dusty, filled with old furniture and boxes. I looked around, trying to find the source of the noise. I saw a wooden chest in the corner with a padlock on it. It looked like it had been moved recently. I wondered what was inside. I walked towards the chest, curious. I reached for the padlock and tried to open it. It was stuck. I pulled harder, and then I heard a voice. "Leave it alone." I jumped and dropped the flashlight. I looked around, terrified. There was no one there. The voice sounded like a whisper, but it was clear and menacing. It came from the chest. "Who's there?" I asked, trembling. "Leave it alone, or you'll regret it." The voice said again. I felt a surge of fear and ran back to the stairs. I climbed up and slammed the door behind me. I locked it and ran to my bedroom. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told my kids what happened. They didn't believe me. They said I was imagining things or that it was a prank. They said they wanted to see the basement and the chest. I told them not to go near it, but they didn't listen. They said they were going to explore the house and have some fun. They left me alone and went to their rooms. I decided to do some research on the house and my great-uncle. I found an old newspaper article online that told a horrifying story. The article said that my great-uncle was a member of a cult that worshipped Satan. He and his followers performed rituals and sacrifices in the basement, using the chest as an altar. They believed that they could summon a demon and gain its power. They were wrong. The article said that one night, the cult tried to open the chest and release the demon. But something went wrong. The chest exploded and a fire broke out. The cult members were burned alive, except for my great-uncle. He escaped, but he was badly injured. He was arrested and sent to a mental hospital. He never spoke again. The article said that the house was sealed off and the chest was locked. The authorities said that the chest contained nothing but ashes and bones. They said that the cult was delusional and that there was no demon. They said that the house was safe. They were wrong, too. The house was not safe. It was infested with demonic entities that fed on our fears and weaknesses. They tormented us every night, every day. They whispered in our ears. They showed us visions. They gave us nightmares. They made us see things that weren't there and things that were. They made us see the dead. They made us see the cult members burned and mutilated. They made us see my husband, bloody and broken. They made us see each other, twisted and evil. They made us hate each other and ourselves. They made us want to die. We tried to escape, but we couldn't. The house wouldn't let us. The doors were locked, the windows were barred, the phone was dead. We were trapped, with no hope, no help, no way out. We were doomed. This is my last message, my last chance to warn you. Do not come to this house. Do not open the chest. Do not disturb the evil that lurks here. Stay away, stay far away, or you'll end up like us. Now I am telling you another spine-chilling tale of a woman who visited a house that was haunted by a vengeful ghost. This is her story in her own words. My name is Laura, and I am a journalist. I was working on a story about a famous murder case that happened 20 years ago. A man named John Smith killed his wife and 2 children and then hanged himself in their house. The house was abandoned ever since and became a local legend. People said that it was cursed and that the ghost of John Smith still haunted it. I was curious and decided to visit the house and see for myself. I wanted to find out what really happened and why John Smith did what he did. I thought it would be a great story and a great adventure. I was wrong. I went to the house on a stormy night. It was dark and rainy, and the house looked eerie and sinister. I parked my car outside and grabbed my camera and recorder. I walked to the front door and knocked. There was no answer. I tried the knob, and it opened. I stepped inside. The house was cold and damp and smelled of decay. The furniture was covered with dust and cobwebs, and the walls were stained with blood. I felt a shiver down my spine, but I ignored it. I turned on my recorder and started to explore. I went to the living room where I saw a fireplace, a sofa, and a TV. The TV was still on, showing static. I wondered how it was possible, since the house had no electricity. I walked to the TV and tried to turn it off. It didn't work. I unplugged it, and it still didn't work. I heard a voice coming from the TV. "Hello, Laura." I gasped and dropped the plug. I looked at the TV and saw a face. It was John Smith. He looked pale and gaunt, and his eyes were red and angry. He smiled, and it was a twisted smile. "Welcome to my house, Laura. I've been expecting you," he said. I felt a surge of fear and backed away. I grabbed my camera and took a picture of the TV. I wanted to have proof that I was not hallucinating. I looked at the picture and saw nothing. The TV was blank. "Who are you? What do you want?" I asked, trembling. "I'm John Smith, the owner of this house, and I want you to stay with me forever," he said. He laughed, and it was a horrible laugh. I ran to the door and tried to open it. It was locked. I pulled and pushed, but it wouldn't budge. I screamed and banged on the door. No one heard me. No one came. I was trapped. I turned around and saw John Smith standing behind me. He was holding a knife, and it was dripping with blood. He had a crazed look on his face, and he was coming towards me. "Please, don't hurt me. Please, leave me alone," I begged. He shook his head and said, "No, Laura, you can't leave me. You're mine, now. You're my new family." He raised the knife and stabbed me in the chest. I felt a sharp pain, and then everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed. I was alive, but barely. I had a bandage on my chest and tubes in my arms. I saw a doctor and a police officer standing next to me. They looked relieved and worried. "Laura, you're awake. Thank God. You're lucky to be alive." The doctor said, "What happened? Where am I?" I asked weakly. "You're in the hospital, Laura. You were attacked by a man in a house. He stabbed you and left you for dead. But you managed to call 911 before you passed out. The paramedics found you and brought you here. You've been in a coma for a week." The police officer said, "A week? Who attacked me? Why?" I asked. "We don't know, Laura. We don't have a suspect or a motive. The house was empty when we got there. There was no sign of anyone except you, and the TV was off." The police officer said, "The TV? What about the TV?" I asked. "The TV was off, Laura. There was nothing on it." "Why? What did you see?" The police officer asked. I hesitated, and then I told them. I told them about John Smith and his ghost. I told them about his voice and his face. I told them about his knife and his smile. They looked at me and they didn't believe me. They said I was delirious and traumatized. They said I was imagining things or that it was a hallucination. They said there was no ghost and no John Smith. They were wrong. There was a ghost and there was a John Smith. And he was still in the house waiting for me, waiting for his next victim. He was still haunting me in my dreams. He was still whispering in my ears and showing me visions. He was still telling me that I was his. He was still trying to kill me. This is my story, listeners. The story of how I survived a night in a haunted house. The story of how I escaped from a vengeful ghost. The story of how I lived to tell the tale. But I don't know for how long. He was still trying to kill me. But I didn't give up, listeners. I didn't let him win. I fought back with all my strength. I sought help from professionals and friends. I went to therapy and took medication. I learned to cope and to heal. I learned to live again. And I did. I survived, listeners. I survived a night in a haunted house. I survived a vengeful ghost. I survived a near-death experience. And I'm still here, telling you my story. The story of how I overcame my fear and my pain. The story of how I found hope and happiness. The story of how I became a survivor. And you can, too. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're facing, whatever you're afraid of, you can overcome it. You can survive it. You can live again. You just have to believe and to fight. You just have to be brave and strong. You just have to be a survivor. This is my story, listeners. The story of how I survived a night in a haunted house. The story of how I escaped from a vengeful ghost. The story of how I lived to tell the tale. And I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye, listeners. Thank you for listening to Horror House. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you sleep well tonight.